want none! You don't want none!
What's going on, Tar Heel Nation? It's your favorite North Carolinian, Russ the Tar Heel. And how about them Heels, baby? 3-0, 31-13 against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. That gives the North Carolina Tar Heels a victory over an SEC team that just played Georgia real tough, a victory over App State, which always punches up, and a victory over a Big Ten team, which everybody was talking about how they only gave up 8 points a game. Now, obviously, like I said in my preview video, when you play Nebraska and you play EMU, of course you're not going to give up a ton of points. And I did not expect necessarily, for all intents and purposes, the Minnesota Golden Gophers to put up a lot of points. My prediction for the game was 30-24, and that's largely predicated off of, unfortunately, the history of the Tar Heels kind of letting us down. And while this game was a much better offering up of the product that they can deliver, you know, what we've come to expect from North Carolina with the talent that they have, the coaches they have, Drake Maye quarterback, et cetera, we still left a ton of points on the field. I mean, the fact that the game was 31-13, that's great in the sense that they definitely covered. You know, they got an 18-point victory over a Big Ten team that was undefeated at the time. The same team, for all intents and purposes, that won 9 football games last year. The problem is that North Carolina should have probably scored 45, maybe even 52 against that Gopher defense. And not only that, they kind of gave them a couple of points with a 13 that they gave up. So one thing I will say is that I was extremely impressed with North Carolina's defense. Now, you take that with a grain of salt because the simple fact of the matter is that Ethan Kaliakmanis is, while for all intents and purposes, he seems to be a good kid, he's just not a very explosive quarterback, and they don't have a lot of athletes. So them holding them to 13 points, I think that that's kind of what you should expect, given what the Minnesota Golden Gophers had to offer. Let's go ahead and get into some team stats, though. So the Gophers were able to pick up 19 first downs. North Carolina was able to pick up 26. They went an astounding 12 for 17 on third down and 1 for 1 on fourth down. 519 yards of total offense for the Heels against Minnesota only being able to garner 303. Hey, that's good, man. That's good for the offense. That's good for the defense. The defense only gave up 133 passing yards. Like I said, Ethan Kaliakmanis is not really somebody that strikes fear in you as far as lighting you up. So that makes sense. And the Heels also were able to get 2 interceptions. One against Kaliakmanis in the beginning of the game. And then I think Kramer came in and he threw like a Hail Mary with somebody in his face in the end zone that I think Armani Chapman picked it off. So that was a huge play too for the Heels to get 2 INTs to help seal the game, if you will. 2 interceptions, man, in those spots. That was huge. And it's great to see the secondary making plays on the football. They only gave up 170 rushing yards as well. That's serviceable. Now, North Carolina had 414 passing yards. The problem was that coming off that App State game where they ran all over App State, they could not run the football to save their lives. To the point where Chip Lindsey basically abandoned the run game because they were getting like a yard, 2 yards a pop. So that is something that we're going to have to fix moving into the game at Pittsburgh, especially because Pittsburgh, while it's in the ACC, they do have a good front seven, and we're going to need to be able to run the football. I mean, that's just plain and simple. We cannot continue to just rely on Drake and the receivers that we have to just sling it all around, especially when we're playing against a good secondary And Pitt has a good secondary too. So we have got to be able to run the football. So that was disappointing, is the inability to move the football on the ground. And then, like I said, Chip Lindsey just completely abandoned the run game, and he just started slinging it around, which there were tons of yards to get through the air. And, Drake made him pay. 414 yards. He did throw 2 touchdowns, but he had 2 just unbelievably bonehead interceptions in the middle part of the game. And it's kind of like the South Carolina game, where they were at times where Carolina was going to blow the game open. And they were just unnecessary. I think the first one was on like a 1st and 10. It's like, what are you doing, bro? Like, what are we doing here? Just mistakes that Drake didn't make last year. And, maybe he's still trying to get accustomed to the receivers that are on that team. When you're practicing with Tez Walker and Nate McCollum for the entire offseason, if you will, and then Tez is not able to play and Nate's injured. He finally gets back today, but maybe he just hasn't been able to generate that kind of chemistry that, he'd been working the whole spring and summer for, with that receiver group. So hopefully that will continue to improve. But now he's 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions on the year through 3 games. So the yardage was great. It was great to see, Drake throw for over 400. That was fantastic. But those 2 interceptions, man, they could have been, it could be a very different story if North Carolina's defense didn't stand up the way that it did throughout the game. So those are things that we have got to fix, man. And, you have confidence in Drake not to make those bonehead plays, and they were bonehead. There's no other way to put it. I love Drake, best quarterback in Carolina history. That's my personal position. But, you cannot make those plays, especially in the spots that we should have put that team away way before the 4th quarter. And, we let Minnesota hang around, and we shouldn't have, because, quite frankly, they're not nearly as good of a football team as Carolina. And that's one of the things we got to keep talking about is Carolina plays down to their competition. And this seems like it's every year since Mac has been back. What Mac has been able to help us do is get wins. But they're always way closer than they should be. When you look at our roster, when you look at their roster, we just lack that killer instinct, man, where we just put teams away. And Carolina at one point was up 21-3. And they're 1 play, 2 plays away from just taking their soul. And they never did. There wasn't one part in this game where they just took their soul, even though they won comfortably by 18. They covered. They had a better game than what I anticipated them having. But they just, when you watch that football game and you see all the points that were left out on the field, and then you see the couple of times where the defense kind of got a little soft at the end of the first half, they allowed that touchdown. It's disappointing because we could have blown that team out as opposed to just beating them comfortably, if you will, by 18 points. We're a much better football team than them. We're a better football team than 31-13. So, and I'm trying not to nitpick here in the sense that obviously we're 3-0. 3-0. Win against an SEC team, win against App State, win against a Big Ten team. One of the hardest non-conference schedules in college football. When you see all these other teams, that are playing cupcakes, they're playing high school teams, if for all intents and purposes. But I'm happy. I will say that I'm happy. 3-0, beating that team 31-13. PJ Fleck, man, he has a real good disciplined football team. And where they lack in athleticism, he kind of evens things out by just having those kids in the right position. And it was a close football game for a little bit. And a lot of that was because of North Carolina, more so than it was because of Minnesota. So, we got out of there with an 18-point victory, man. You really can't complain too much. Carolina only had 5 penalties for 47 yards. Minnesota never gets penalized. They only had 3 penalties for 25 yards. And Carolina won the time of possession 33 minutes and 10 seconds to 26 minutes and 50 seconds. Like I said, Kelly McManus, His line, 11 for 29, 133 yards and a pick. The Kramer kid that came in when Callie McManus got hurt, he was 0 for 1 with a pick. Taylor, if I'm not mistaken, this is that freshman kid that had a big game last week. My man had 22 carries for 138 yards and a touchdown. And he was kind of their bell cow, man. He really was their offense for basically the duration of the ball game. And then Crooms led all receivers for Minnesota with 4 receptions for 46 yards. Now on the flip side, like I said, Drake went 29 for 40. He had 414 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And it would have been a great game, bounce-back game for Drake Maye. It was kind of like the Drake Maye of old, hitting people down the field. Seemed like he had some good momentum going with Nate McCollum. And then he just had those 2 really bad interceptions, man, that just got you scratching your head. And you're like, why are you letting him stay in the game, bro? But 414 yards, 2 touchdowns, 29 for 40, man. It was good to see Drake kind of get back to those old numbers. Omarion Hampton had 13 carries, 46 yards, and a touchdown. It was good to see British Brooks get back in there. He also had a touchdown late in the game, and I think that was that fourth quarter touchdown. And then welcome back Nate McCollum, if you will. I mean, technically he hasn't ever been back because this is his first year with Carolina, but he only had 1 catch against App State for, I think it was 8 or 9 yards. My man just tore it up today. 15 receptions, 165 yards, and a touchdown. And he was huge for us in this football game. Just absolutely huge, Nate McCollum. So I'm hoping that we can see that more and more and more because, you know, we've had Josh Downs for a while, and Josh Downs was a very good guy out of the slot. He found grass. He was always open, and Nate seemed to kind of have a very similar thing going with Drake Maye. Now, I would like to see the ball spread out a little bit more, but when your guy is hot and he's open, man, I mean, you got to feed him. And Nate had one heck of a ball game, and he was a big reason why North Carolina started off so hot. Had some really good plays down the field and some really good run after catches too. I mean, he's just a football player, man, and that's what you got to do. You got to get the football in your football players' hands. So real good to see the Heels take care of business. Now, you know, Carolina sold this game out. I was a little disappointed with the fans. They didn't stay. So right here, ESPN is saying that the attendance was 45,151. That's 89% capacity. And you could see some seats in there. And, you know, you got a Big Ten opponent, 3:30 on a Saturday in Chapel Hill. What else are you supposed to be doing right now except sitting there at that football game and cheering on the Heels? You know, I will say that I was disappointed to see that that place wasn't rocking from beginning to ending. You know, Carolina fans, man, we have got to stinking do a better job of supporting this football team and making that place a true 12th man. You know, they're playing hard. They're undefeated right now. You know that we're going to Pittsburgh later to open up ACC play. So this is the last home game we got in a while. And I'm seeing blue seats. I just think that's ridiculous, man. You know, especially, I know that if I'm buying tickets, I'm staying for the duration of the game. You know, I don't care if we're getting blown out. Hey, man, I'm going to head back over there and I'm going to grab me another beer or something. Good night. I mean, stay and support the football team. So I want to see these guys get the support that they deserve, man. But at the end of the day, we took care of business, man. Every time the Gophers, you know, they poked that head up real quick, just went ahead and knocked it back down. That's how the defense was. It was like we were playing whack-a-mole on that defensive side. Every time they poked that head up, somebody on the defense was whacking it. Just like, And every time Drake Maye threw a pick, and it was like, oh, man, Minnesota's kind of creeping back in the game. They gave him the football back. That Minnesota head, that little Gopher would pop up, and he'd whack it. He'd be like, So, I was real excited to see the defense play that way. I mean, sometimes we're going to have to lean on them, bro. And over the past couple of years, we have not been able to do that. So the fact that we've gotten a 17-point game out of them from South Carolina and a 13-point game against Minnesota at home, hey, man, that's progress. That is progress. And there were times where the defense could have folded and just completely let them get back into this football game, and they stuck that head up and they whacked. So that was great to see. Great to see from the defense. If I could take one thing out of today's game, it's going to be the defense holding them to 13 points. Yes, their offense is trash. Got it. Tracking. But you know what? When their offense is trash, you got to do what you got to do. Hold them to 13 points. And that's exactly what the Heels did. So that was encouraging to see moving forward, that even if the offense is, they need somebody to pick them up, the defense is capable of making that happen. That is extremely promising when we're talking about the rest of the season as Drake kind of finds his way through, this little lull, if you will, that he's kind of in, with the interceptions and stuff. So the defense was good to see. And on the offensive side, game ball goes to Nate McCullum, bro. Nate balled out, had a fantastic football game, and this is a different football game without him. So I'm super happy that he's healthy. I'm super happy that he's been able to come back and have a successful ball game. And obviously that's just something that defenses are going to have to prepare for in the future. And it's going to open up those running lanes for British and O'Marion. It's going to open up receivers down the field. Bryson Nesbitt also had a big game. So Copenhaver obviously has got the cast on his hand. He can't catch the football. You saw him come in on some blocking plays. Bryson Nesbitt came in some big spots. Big guy, 6'5", kind of lanky, but my man caught the football, got uphill, got to the sticks, had some real big catches, including that touchdown catch. So it was good to see those tight ends get into the passing game. Kamari had a couple of big catches early in the game, man. So Drake, he's spreading the ball around a little bit in the beginning. Nate was definitely the focus. And I'm not even mad at him. 15 catches for $165 and a touchdown. So it's good to see Nate back, and it's good to see Drake have somebody that he has a lot of confidence in, because that just bodes well for the rest of the game. Like I said, one of the things that I want to see change, we've got to develop inside this program, is that killer instinct. When you got these teams down 21-3, you got to put them out of their misery, man. All right, that's the PG way of putting this thing. You got to punch them while they're down. I mean, knock them out. Don't let them hang around. Don't feel sorry for them. You have to knock them out. And that's what we need to develop. That's that next step. So you're winning games by 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points. You beat South Carolina by 14. Have a tough one against App State. You beat Minnesota by 18. We're showing progress. Maybe we haven't turned the corner, but we're starting to peek around the corner. Maybe we're starting to turn that corner as a program to where we're starting to put these guys away. Hey, we'll see next week, bro, because Pittsburgh is going to be another tough team. And I think the difference is they're going to have a couple of good athletes. Now, once again, Phil Jerkovich is not the greatest passing quarterback, if you will. But I think this Pittsburgh team is going to be more talented than this Minnesota team. And it'll be a great game, because it'll be Carolina's first true road game of the season, man. But the Heels are 3-0. First time, back-to-back, 3-0 starts since 96-97 before Mac left, when Carolina was a top 10 team. So, like I've said before, this schedule and this roster and this coaching staff is setting up to be a phenomenal, unforgettable season. The question is will the Heels reach their potential? Will they stop playing down to the competition, and will they just start taking care of business like they should? That's what's remaining to be seen. 31-13. North Carolina handles business against Minnesota. We'll catch you on the next one, Tar Heel Nation.